I'm in your corner, friend. I'm in your corner.
Before I even start, I just wanted to tell you that you have been one of the most consistent people, the most consistent supporter that I have on top of my channel. So I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your courage for you to even come here and wanting to share your story. Go ahead and tell me who you are, a little bit about your background, your journey into motherhood, and basically like what do you do?
My name is Rachel. I am married. This year will make 6 years I've been married. We have a blended family, but we have 3 children together. They are ages 5, 4, and 2, my stair step kids. I don't know what I was thinking when I got pregnant and had a baby 3 years in a row back to back. There's not enough wine in this world. It's not. I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband works full-time. I basically spend about a good 90 to 95% of my time advocating for my kids with special needs. My children have autism. I am also on the spectrum. So I just kind of spend my time doing that and kind of thinking of more ways that can help my children in the future, because I'm raising Black children that will one day be Black men, and they will be Black men that have special needs. So that is what I do.
You being on the spectrum, how long were you aware of yourself?
I was not aware of myself. I feel like when I found out about my husband's oldest, he's 5 now, but this was on 2020. So at the time he was 2. The more that I learned about him, the more I learned about myself and started thinking of things that I used to go through as a kid and that I still go through as an adult. I was like, I kind of want to get myself evaluated, but I kind of didn't think that I wasn't sure I would have the support, only because I didn't have as much support when it came to what I thought could be going on with my 5-year-old that was 2 at the time. So it took a lot of learning about myself, and I'm still trying to learn about myself.
So as you're trying to parent your kids, you're there trying to reparent yourself in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to do things differently than how I was raised, how our generation growing up, where mental illness and special needs wasn't a thing. It wasn't talked about. And I want to be so different from that with my children. My 5-year-old is the most noticeable out of the 3 that is autistic, and he is constantly stimming, is constantly jumping, pacing, running back and forth, fidgeting with his fingers. Like, if you look at him, it's obvious that he's on the spectrum. He's 5, and right now it's semi-okay, right? Because he's a kid, until I get around in public and then we get the stares. And I've had like adults make comments when they look at my son and be like, oh, he's crazy. Or like other moms like pull their kids away from my kid. Right now, it's semi-okay what he does. But imagine that Black man, he's big for his age, being this Black boy. Imagine him being a Black man, right? Jumping, stimming, being him, naturally him. Imagine him doing that in front of a store, a corner store, outside on the street, just regulating himself, because that's him. And imagine the phone calls that the police would get that there's a Black man outside of their establishment. They think he's on drugs. They think that he's high off something. They think he's a threat. That is the world that I'm raising my children in. So I'm just trying to figure out at all times what I can do for my kids that will help them, which is hard.
When it comes to even like taking them out in public, do you ever avoid doing that?
I feel like I definitely shy more away from getting out in public, and it's not because I'm ashamed of them. So just so that's clear, first off, it's taking 3 kids in public and out, okay? Special needs or not special needs. To have to pack up the car, to get them dressed, to pack up any extra clothes, diapers, to get them loaded in the car, that's a lot within itself. I don't refer to my kids as normal or not normal, right? But for a typical 5-year-old, you could probably tell them like, hey, before we cross the street, make sure we look both ways. Make sure you hold mommy's hand, right? But for my 5-year-old, he's scared of parking lots. So his first instinct is to dart into the street, right? Whereas I can't get even a handicap plaque for my car because doctors will say, well, his disability is not physical. He can walk. It's more so the safety of my children. It's more so that when my 5-year-old compared to the other two meltdowns, when he has a meltdown, it's not like, oh, it'll pass. So before, I used to be like, the minute that he freaks out, it's like, okay, it's time to go. Last year, I tried taking him to the Festival of Lights, and it was too much for him. We made it 3 minutes out of my car. We walked to the corner. The lights was overstimulating for him. The people was overstimulating for him. The streets were. We got back in my car, and I drove another 45 minutes back home in traffic. Whereas to a couple weekends ago, we went to the mall. He had about 6 meltdowns. Got a lot of stares throughout the mall. The old me would have said, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Right. But I can't stop my other two from having fun because he's upset. And I'm trying to find a balance where I'm teaching my kids, as much as I love you, the world does not stop for you. Nothing stops for you. Right. If the other two are having fun, how fair is that for me to take that fun away from them? I have to learn how to ignore the behavior that my child is doing without ignoring my child. I go on about the day. Like, oh, you see that little girl? She's pretty. You should say hi. But then by the time that he's calmed down and he sees a little kid and he goes up and he tries to say hi, their mom is pulling them away because they're terrified of my kid. Most times I avoid going out, but it's thinking of like trying to prepare myself for the environment, how he's going to respond, how many extra hands that I have, because they have no sense of danger. So it's things like that mostly.
What is that support system? Because your husband's working, right? You're primarily the caregiver,
Caretaker.
you're a caretaker all day, every day. You're with these kids, right? How does that have an impact on your mental health? And what kind of support have you been getting?
I get a good amount of support. I know that before my oldest was diagnosed when he was 2 at the time, and I had the speculations like, hey, I didn't know the correct verbiage. So, as a mom, automatically, hey, I think there's something wrong with him. Now, to this day, I can say there's absolutely nothing wrong with my children. And I stand on that, right? But at the time, it was like, I think something's wrong with him. I don't like, this is not normal. Why is he saying all these words now? But then he just stopped. Why did he used to say mama and he no longer says mama? He used to say grandma and call his brother's name, and that no longer happens. I feel like at that time, I didn't get a lot of support. Everybody was kind of like, including his pediatrician, well, boys develop slower. Oh, there's nothing wrong with him. Oh, he'll be fine. I'm sure he'll grow out of it. And I got support from my sister and my best friend. Neither one of them had children at the time. But when I expressed my concerns, they listened. For my best friend, she just has a bunch of nieces and nephews. So it was just kind of like, no, I don't think that's really normal either. So you should probably have that checked out. But that was the most support I got during that time. And then when he got diagnosed, it wasn't a surprise. My support system shifted kind of their way of thinking. And I had to make it clear, if this is what's going on around my kid, with my kid, and you're going to be around, you need to do the things that's necessary for you to be able to be on the same page as me. Even me getting him evaluated, I remember staying up till 4 a.m. every morning, just doing research. I was pregnant with my now 2-year-old at the time. And then my middle child was only 1. And the signs weren't as obvious in him as it was in my oldest. So I was like, I just noticed little things, but I guess it couldn't hurt to, get him evaluated too. He got evaluated. He was diagnosed too, just lower on the spectrum, right? And then my oldest got diagnosed September 15th. My second got diagnosed October 14th. The same day my second got diagnosed, my mom sat me and my brother at my kitchen table and told me that my dad had cancer. And then 2 weeks later, I gave birth to my youngest. And everything just kind of hit me. I didn't really have time to process anything because everything was just back to back to back. Since then, my support has changed a lot. I know who I can trust my kids with. I don't need you to react how older people would react back when we were younger, right? I want you to be patient with my kid. I want you to find a way to try to help my kid get through whatever they're going through, right? I want to know if I died today, that with all the therapies I have them in, with all the help that I'm getting them, with the way that I parent them, I need to know somebody's going to keep that going. You know, in the generation that we grew up in, it's, oh, ain't nothing wrong with him. He'll be fine. You know, stuff like that's not talked about. You know, mental health is not talked about. Mental illness is not talked about. Having special needs, it's like your kid is referred to as being bad. I don't like referring to my kids as being bad. My middle child, he take me to hell and back. I don't like referring to kids as bad. You know, I don't feel like my oldest ever went through a terrible 2-stage. I feel like he went through a stage where he was surrounded by people that did not understand him and did not know who he was. I don't think he was bad for constantly running and pacing and jumping and fidgeting and banging his head against things or rocking his entire body against something to get to sleep. I don't think he was bad. I think he was surrounded by people, myself included, that did not know him and did not know what was going on with him. That's the difference I try to make.
Now knowing you have 3 kids with special needs, how did that affect you personally?
I feel like they taught me so much about them and about myself. The things that I know about myself now, I never would have thought about or took heed to or took the time to even pay attention to if it wasn't for them. I know that, like, my youngest, he doesn't like being touched unless he initiates the touch, right? But you and I were married women with children. Imagine us being said that we don't like to be touched. I truly hate physical touch. But why? How? You have kids, you're married. But I'm a person and I'm allowed to hate being touched, especially when I have 3 kids that are touching me all day. I'm allowed to hate being touched. They helped me so much. And granted, I'm not a perfect mom. I'm not a perfect parent. I yell sometimes, I get frustrated sometimes. Sometimes I have to say, please, for the love of God, get the hell away from me. Regardless, there's never a day that I don't think about how can I be better for them? How can I help them more? How can I make sure that the help that I'm getting them now, I never want them to get older and say, my mom made me do all this and this and that, and I hated it. They're more than just kids with autism. They're kids. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that. So I feel like they've bettered me in a lot of ways, even when they do stress me out.
Knowing what you know now, but in the Black community, what would you want to see done differently as a result of being their mom now?
For in the Black community, for special needs to not be something look like frowned upon. I want people to stop being afraid to get their child evaluated. I want in the Black community, for one especially, to remove the R word. Please work on that. Even people that don't have children with special needs, I want them to teach their children about kids with special needs so that when they get around a kid with special needs, they know not to look at that child differently. I want them to when you find out something about your child, whether they have ADHD or ADD or autism or whatever it may be, to not automatically get defensive and be like, ain't shit wrong with my kid. My kid's not, the R word. I want there to stop being that stigma. Well, boys develop slower. I want you to actually take time to pay attention to your kid. And if you notice something different, actually take heed to it. Do something about it. Don't just overlook it. It's like if you don't have your own child's best interest, why would you expect for anybody else to? One thing I pray for and I would love to one day hope for is that first responders get trained on how to respond to people with special needs. But I don't want you to see a child or a person of color that may have special needs and they're doing what they do, whether it's STEM or vocal STEM or whatever it is. My kid screams to the top of his lungs. I don't want your first response to be that he's a threat. So that is what I would love to change.
What advice would you give to another mom that may be going through the same thing as you?
To fight for what you want for your kid. You may not get as much support as you would like to or that you would hope for, but never let that support deter you from fighting for your child. Advocating for my kids has been a challenge, but I will never stop. As many companies as they've gone through for therapies, we have been referred to as a very difficult case because I, as a mom, don't let them tell me what they're going to do with my child. I want to put this out there. If you get therapies for your kids, most companies are money hungry, right? And they will tell you, you have to do all these hours for your kid. And I want you to know, and that's why I'm putting this out there, you don't have to do that. No matter how much the insurance recommends it, how much a company recommends it. My kid was 2 years old and they wanted to do 40 hours a week of therapy for him. That's a full-time job. And then when I speak up and I say, no, he's not doing that. He was 2 at the time. My middle child was 1 at the time. They wanted to give him 25 hours a week. No, like, I want you to speak up and never be afraid to speak up. The amount of times I've been referred to as difficult or aggressive, however the case may be, knowing if I was another color, I'll be called a great mom for fighting for my child. But that's not the case. We will always live in a world where we have to fight like this. And I'm okay with that.
For somebody that's watching your story, what is the biggest takeaway that you want them to get from you?
I want them to know it's going to be okay. A lot of parents, when they get that first diagnosis of their child, their world comes crashing down, right? And I get that. You go through a grievance phase where you kind of grieve the child that you thought you would have, and that is okay. And your feelings are valid. Don't ever blame yourself. You did not beat this into your child. You did not drill this into your child. You're going to be okay. It's okay to cry, and it's okay to be frustrated, and it's okay to say, I'm tired of this. I have been there, and not discrediting my husband, but when he works 6 days a week, 10 to 12-hour shifts, and it primarily falls on me, I'm constantly asking myself, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right choice? Am I doing what's right for them by having them do all this? Only you can know how to fight and advocate for your child. And can nobody do that better than you? Do as much research as you can so that you can learn more about your child, and always know no two kids are ever the same. All 3 of my kids are on the spectrum, and they are so different. It's going to be okay. And you are going to have your hard days, and you are going to want to pull your hair out, and you're going to want to go put gas in your car and not come back, because that is me every week. Okay. It's going to be okay. And if you don't get the support that you need, then there's plenty of other support out there, and you may feel like you're alone at times, but don't surround yourself by anybody, and don't put yourself in an environment anywhere where your mental health is affected while you are trying to make a difference for your children. And I hope that makes sense. It's going to be okay.
Tell us where we can find you and anything else that you want everyone to know.
Well, I was nervous in the beginning of my intro, and I totally forgot to mention I'm a small business owner. That flew over my head. You can find me on Instagram at Slay by Ray, and my business page, Slay by Ray Collection. I used to be a makeup artist, but then everything happened with my kids, and I put my business on the back burner. And then, it kind of became like, what can I do to still incorporate what I love? So I sell lashes and lip glosses and lip kits and hair growth oils and all that. But I am always on Instagram. That is where you can find me. And one day I will be coming out with a YouTube channel when I can get over this nervousness that I have.
We all have these nerves. So you just have to put the fear right next to you and be like, okay, we pushing through. Just like even moms who find like the diagnosis and all kind of different things, like they don't have a lot of people out there sharing their stories. And as many of the people that are out there sharing it, there's still so many other stories that need to be told. So
Yeah,
you will find your tribe just by sharing it.
that's my
So
inspiration behind wanting to start a YouTube, because I remember finding out about my oldest and I couldn't find anybody our color sharing their story. But you inspire me, and I'm gonna be like you when I
we
grow
get
up.
shut up, bye.
I'm never gonna let you down.